Are you somebody who is aware of your emotions, but also able to control them? Stay tuned and learn how to interpret this card when it shows up in a reading, as well as examples of two real-life leaders with vastly different reputations for handling their feelings. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel, where we are learning the tarot deck one card at a time. Today's card is the King of Cups. Most people find the court cards to be the most challenging part of the tarot deck, and I will do my best to demystify it here. I will be using the Rider-Waite Tarot deck. You'll find a link to the deck below, as well as to the many books that I used in my research. So let's get started. In simplistic terms, the king is the father figure of the royal court. He's married to the queen and they have two children. The page represents their youngest child, and the knight is their frat boy's son who is off at college, finding his way in the world and trying not to get into too much trouble. In the Middle Ages in Europe, kings came to power through conquest, election, inheritance, or some other type of agreement. They ruled people and territories within defined borders. The king was the official leader. He had the ultimate authority and the final word. He had great power due to his position, and everybody knew it. Kings generally grew up knowing that this was their future, and so did the people in their kingdom, so they were very much groomed for the position. In tarot, the kings are considered to be wise, mature, stable, and have lots of masculine energy. I think the best example of a king is King Charles III in England. As a prince, Charles grew up knowing that he would be king once his mother passed away. She passed away in 2022 at the age of 96, and he'd waited his entire 73 years to be king. Next in line to the throne is his son, Prince William, followed by William's oldest child, Prince George. I found an interesting article in Harper's Bazaar from 2017 titled, "How Prince William is Training to Become King." You can find a link in the description box, and it is a great example of how kings are prepared to rule. At the time of the article, William was 35 years old, and the article describes how he started training at a young age under the guidance of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. As a teenager, Queen Elizabeth would host William at Windsor Castle, where they would open the state boxes and she would guide him through the papers. This taught him about the Constitution. In 2009, when William was 27, he underwent an intensive 2-year training program to help him learn about the country. This included working with different departments in the British governments, private lessons from constitutional experts, and briefings with high-profile people such as the Prime Minister. As he's gotten older, Prince William has done a lot of charity work. In 2017, he spearheaded a mental health campaign called Heads Together, which put together a coalition of 8 mental health charity partners to change the conversation on mental health. Their goals included tackling stigma, raising awareness, and providing help for people with mental health problems. Another one of his projects, which started in June 2023, is called Homewards, which is a 5-year, locally led program that hopes to end homelessness. I hope this helps you to understand the kings. They are educated, mature, and prepared from close to birth to lead and to rule. One of the reasons that the court cards are challenging is that they can represent 3 things. The first is a person. Kings were considered to be mature men over the age of 40. Depending on your age, a king could represent your father, grandfather, adult son, romantic partner, boss, or any other mature man in your life. The second thing a king can represent is a part of yourself that has a masculine, take-charge energy. You're the first to volunteer and have no issue taking responsibility or telling people what to do. And the third thing a court card can represent is a situation that requires you to be a leader. For instance, you can't figure out why you're struggling to get things done at work, and a king card can indicate that it's time for you to stop hiding in your cubicle and take on a leadership role. So how do you know whether this king represents a real person, a part of yourself, or a situation that requires a new approach? First of all, go by the question. If it isn't clear, look at the surrounding cards and its position in a spread. Here's 2 other things to keep in mind when we discuss the court cards. First of all, don't give much credence to ages, gender, or physical characteristics. For instance, a king is traditionally considered to be a man over the age of 40. Does that mean that he doesn't represent your wife because she's 30 years old and female? No, it does not. Secondly, and more important, look at the energy from this card. Your level of maturity is not based on your age, and it can vary greatly in different areas of your life. We all know super mature people in their teens and very immature people in their 80s. You can also be mature in one area of your life, such as relationships, and totally reckless in another area, such as your finances. One of the easiest ways to understand the personality of each king is to understand the chart on the screen. Each member of the court card's personality is related to 2 elements. Here's a quick reminder of what each element means. Pentacles are connected to the element of earth. It's all about things in the material world, such as our bodies, homes, nature, or how we earn our living. These people are very stable. They work hard and enjoy traditions. Wands is connected to the element of fire. These people tend to be feisty, confident, enthusiastic, adventurous, extroverted, passionate, flashy, and high energy. These people make good athletes and good salespeople. Cups are connected to the element of water. This card is all about emotions. Cups people are gentle, loving, sensitive, nurturing, and feel things deeply. These people make good healers and social workers. Swords is connected to the element of air. Swords is all about communicating and expressing ourselves. This includes our thoughts about ourselves as well as our thoughts about the world around us. This encompasses intelligence, knowledge, truth, mental clarity, and our sense of right and wrong. These people make good lawyers and writers. Each of the court cards is made up of 2 elements. The first element is related to their rank. On the column down the left, you can see that all pages are related to earth, all knights are related to fire, all queens are related to water, and all kings are related to air. Each member of the court card also has a suit, and along the top of the chart you can see the 4 suits. Pentacles are related to earth, wands are related to fire, cups are related to water, and swords are related to air. As you can see on the chart, the King of Cups is a combination of the elements of air and water. The rank of all kings connects to air, which makes sense because kings are considered to be the wise, logical, intellectual communicators of the tarot court. The King of Cups is also connected to the suit of cups, which is the element of water. This is a logical king who also makes decisions based on his intuition and his feelings. So we have a situation where water and air meet up, which is interesting. As air heats up, it expands and rises and is able to hold more water. As air cools down, it contracts and sinks and can hold less water. This combination of air and water has the potential to create everything from clear blue skies to thunderstorms and tornadoes. In the best case scenario, we have a very calm, kind king who is in full control of his emotions. In the worst case scenario, we have a moody, turbulent king who leaves a path of destruction behind him. In the King of Cups, we see a king sitting on a simple throne made of gray stone. He's wearing a crown that has red stones and a wave pattern. Under his crown is a blue cap. He's wearing a blue tunic and a yellow cloak with red trim. He has a goldfish pendant around his neck. He is wearing green shoes. He has a cup in his right hand and a short scepter in his left hand. The sky is gray. The water is choppy and very colorful. On the right side of the card, we see a red ship, and on the left side of the card, we see a blue fish. When the King of Cups appears in a reading, it can represent a kind, stable, and emotionally mature leader. He is very aware of his emotions, but also knows how to keep them under control. It can represent someone who is compassionate, empathetic, and caring, yet capable of making wise, fair, and thoughtful decisions. It can mean there are situations in your life that you need to handle in a mature and balanced fashion. Let's talk about the symbolism of this card. The King of Cups is wearing a strange-looking crown, and I can't tell what it is, despite doing my very best. You can see an enlarged photo on the screen. I'm going to give you two different descriptions from a couple of my favorite authors and let you choose what it means. The first is from Pam Richards in her book Understanding Tarot. Here's what she says, quote, "His crown has waves about it, showing his emotional mind. We can see 3 large red stones which show his desire and ambition for dominance over his element, with the need to be able to use it to create and be channeled to where he needs it. Below is a green wavy line which can show a healing mind, a loving energy, yet one which fluctuates. Overall, this shows him at ease and to be a safe, benevolent man who cares. His emotions, which stem from his thoughts, will be governed by a more organized set of rules than the queen who scatters hugs to anyone in need." Unquote. The second description is from Liz Dean in her book The Ultimate Guide to Tarot, who says that these are jellyfish. Since the King of Cups is related to the element of water, having jellyfish on his crown makes sense. Liz Dean says that the jellyfish may relate in a couple of ways. It may relate to the King of Cups zodiac association, which is Scorpio. It is the sign of a scorpion that is known for its deadly sting, and jellyfish also sting. The jellyfish may also relate to the Gorgon Medusa. If Gorgon Medusa means nothing to you, you're in the same boat as I am, so let me explain. Gorgons were monster figures in Greek mythology. Medusa was the most famous monster figure. She had a head of hair that consisted of snakes. You can see a picture on the screen of a bust of Medusa created by Giovanni Lorenzo Bernini in the 1600s. Medusa was the only Gorgon who was mortal. Her slayer was Perseus, and he killed her by cutting off her neck. From this blood came her 2 sons by Poseidon, the Greek god of the water and the sea, named Chrysaor and Pegasus. Her severed head had a special power. It could turn everyone who looked at it into stone. Hercules is said to have obtained a lot of Medusa's hair, which had the same powers of protection. When exposed to view, the hair was supposed to bring on a storm and cause the enemy to flee. Medusa is actually another word for jellyfish. I've put a link in the description box if you'd like more information. Liz Dean also says that because jellyfish pulsate to move, but have little power to propel themselves on their own, they also symbolize acceptance and trust. In summary, the crown relates to jellyfish and is about protecting yourself from scary things that might happen in the water. And since water represents emotion, we can extrapolate that this king has learned how to control his emotions, even when things are difficult. Under his crown is a blue cap of maintenance, something that is worn under the crown by all of the kings. I had never heard this expression and have linked to a Wikipedia article in the description. Its purpose was to keep a crown secure and comfortable on the head, or to maintain the crown in place. This cap was granted to people as a symbol of honor and special privilege. These were worn by kings of the United Kingdom before their coronation, although King Charles III broke with tradition and put his on at the same time as his crown. This king's cap of maintenance is blue. Pam Richards says that this shows, quote, his faith in feelings, in emotions, and in reading them in others. She says that he may wear this cap to slow down his imaginative, intuitive, and psychic connections, as his crown may act as a channel, and his cap represents a need to focus insights and his thoughts. His blue tunic, like the blue cap of maintenance, can represent imagination, intuition, and spiritual connection. His yellow cloak can represent sentimentality, creativity, and positivity, and the red on the trim of his cloak can signify his passion. If you look at the king's items of clothing, they are red, blue, and yellow, all of the primary colors. Johannes Feibig and Evelyn Berger, in their book The Ultimate Guide to the Rider-Waite Tarot, point out that these colors can indicate that you remain true to your primary aims and to your original source and motives. On the downside, it can indicate that your wishes are too simple. The cup in his right hand symbolizes the suit of cups and his emotional maturity. He has a short scepter in his left hand. Scepters are symbols of a king's earthly power. They are used in the coronation ceremonies and usually extremely lavish. The scepter from Queen Elizabeth and King Charles III coronations is 36 inches long. It contains the world's largest diamond and is a total of 530 carats. In addition to diamonds, it also includes emeralds and rubies. There's a link in the description box if you'd like to learn more. Yeah, look at his scepter. It is quite short and has no jewels at all. Pam Richards points out that he is keeping his scepter simple and understated because he wishes to wield his power simply, quietly, and in an understated fashion. He is wearing green shoes. Pam Richards says that these are made of fish skin, and I quote, "They represent that he walks with emotional purpose. Everything is done with respect to how it feels to him or how it feels to others, and his imagination is of great benefit to him in daily life," unquote. He has a goldfish pendant around his neck. Pam Richards says that this fish pendant shows that his imagination and creativity are controlled, as the fish has been caught and is no longer swimming freely in the ocean. The fish is over his heart and represents his subconscious messages or emotional wisdom delivered from the heart with sincerity and a well-thought-out delivery. The sky is gray. This can represent neutrality, indicating that the king wants to make balanced and careful decisions. His throne is made of gray stone, which represents his strength, as well as his commitment to making careful decisions. It's interesting that his throne is floating in rocky waters and his feet are not touching the water. To me, this means that he is aware of his emotions, but is not going to let them sway him from doing the right thing. It can also mean that he is very isolated. The water is choppy and very colorful. It's interesting if we compare the water as we move from the page through the King of Cups. In all of the other court cards, the water is blue and black and not terribly rough. When we get to the king, we see several colors and there are clearly waves. I think that this indicates that he is aware of the depths of his emotions, yet his feet are staying out of the water, so it's as if he's made a conscious decision to distance himself from his emotions. On the right side of the card, we see a red ship riding out the rocky waves. It is still upright. This can represent that passion can help you make it through tough times. We also see a blue fish above the water on the left side of the card. This reminds me of the fish in the Page of Cups. Fish have a lot of symbolism in tarot. They can represent Jesus and the miracle of the loaves and fishes, where Jesus fed a crowd of 5,000 people, but all he had were 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and after feeding them he had leftovers, which proves that Jesus could perform miracles. Jesus also referred to his disciples as fishers of men. Another link to Christianity is that water was used to baptize people, so basically people went into the water like fish. Finally, the fish symbol was used as a symbol for persecuted Christians in the first centuries after Christ's death. Christians would use the fish to identify themselves and mark their meeting places. According to Sasha Graham in the complete book of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, the fish in the Page of Cups represented naiads from Greek mythology, which are female spirits, also known as nymphs, that presided over fresh water. They were worshipped and were considered to have magical and medicinal powers. On the other hand, they were also known to be jealous and vengeful. When the King of Cups appears in an upright position, it can represent you or a part of yourself who is able to balance their thoughts and their emotions. Because he can balance his thoughts, emotions, and experience, he is considered to be very wise. He tells the truth and people trust him. He is tolerant and open-minded. He does not believe that he knows all of the answers. His goal is to make wise, thoughtful, and fair decisions. It can represent a person in a position of power who listens attentively. He is very empathetic, compassionate, and understanding of others, including people who are less fortunate. It can represent a kind, stable, and emotionally matured leader. He is very aware of his emotions, but also knows how to keep them under control. He knows how to use logic and when to rely on his intuition. It can represent someone who is calm, patient, and relaxed. He is especially calm when there is a crisis. He gives people time to speak and also gives himself time to feel his emotions and make good decisions. He makes a good diplomat because he doesn't rush. Instead, he creates an atmosphere of tolerance and lets both sides be heard. It can represent a mature person who is loving and generous. As you can see on the screen, the King of Cups personality tends to be quiet and modest rather than flashy when compared to his fellow kings. He forms a deep emotional connection and focuses on protecting the people that he is responsible for. His focus is on people and not power or possessions. It can mean that there are situations in your life that you need to handle in a mature and balanced fashion. And finally, it can represent a mature romantic partner, fatherhood, or having children. Here's an example of the upright King of Cups about a leader who I believe is in touch with his emotions, and that is Joe Biden. One of the things that I have always admired about Joe Biden is that he doesn't hide his emotions. I'm going to quote a headline from NBC News, and it says, quote, "Biden is leading by example when he cries in public. Emotional honesty makes men stronger. The new president models a healthier masculinity where empathy and compassion aren't weaknesses, but inform wise decisions." Unquote. There's a link in the description box if you'd like to learn more. Joe Biden has had a lot of tragedy in his life. In December 1972, just a few weeks before he was sworn in as a newly elected United States Senator from Delaware, his wife Nelia and his infant daughter Naomi were killed in an automobile accident. His two remaining children, Beau and Hunter, barely survived. Many years later, his eldest son, Beau, passed away from brain cancer at the age of 46. His youngest son and only remaining child, Hunter, has a history of drug abuse, tax evasion, and buying a gun illegally, which has to be tough when you're the President of the United States and have everything you do heavily scrutinized. All I've ever heard Biden say is that he loves his son. As those of you who live in the United States know, we have a problem with gun violence. During the first 3 months of 2024, 208 people were killed and 419 people were wounded in mass shootings, which is defined as gun-related violence with 4 or more victims. I see Joe Biden meeting with the victims, and you can tell that he feels their pain deeply. A few minutes later, at a news conference, you also see him get angry at the situation. Like the King of Cups, he is in touch with his emotions, but he is also in control of them. When the King of Cups appears in a reverse position, it can represent someone who is critical, indifferent, or pessimistic. It can symbolize someone who is not in control of their emotions. It can represent someone who is insecure, moody, unstable, or has an explosive temper. It could symbolize someone who is cold or doesn't care about people. It can represent someone who thinks they have all the answers. They are a poor listener and a poor communicator. It can symbolize someone who uses love to manipulate people or words to hurt you. It can represent someone who is volatile, intolerant, or untrustworthy. Sometimes this is due to addiction issues. It can symbolize someone who is paranoid or jealous. Because they are so intuitive, people like the King of Cups can confuse other people's thoughts with their own. And finally, it can represent someone who does not make good, fair, or balanced decisions. Here's an example of the reversed King of Cups, and that is King George III. I've linked an article in the description titled George III, the Complex King, Dutiful, Intelligent, and Cultured, but Cruelly Labeled Mad. If you are a fan of the musical Hamilton, as I am, you are likely familiar with the memorable scenes with King George III, who is clearly mentally ill. There's a link to all 3 songs in the description box if you'd like to see them. King George III is a great example of the reversed King of Cups. He is moody, volatile, and paranoid, among other things. I thought it would be interesting to share a bit about him and the fact that there's a lot more to him than we saw in Hamilton. To quote the article I just mentioned, George III is largely known as being the king who lost America and his mind. He is also the longest reigning male monarch in British history, reigning for almost 60 years. His reign was marked by scientific progress and discovery, but also political and social upheaval and war." Unquote. George became king in 1760 at the age of 22. The next year, after rejecting 7 other princesses, he chose to marry Sophia Charlotte, who he described as, quote, "being amiable and capable of taking any impression and being molded into any form, although not a great beauty." Unquote. Lovely, right? The couple had 15 children together over 20 years. When George was 44, he had 2 of his children die 6 months apart. Prince Alfred was 2 and Prince Octavius was 4. According to the article that I mentioned, George was a, quote, "conscientious and serious ruler who engaged deeply in the social, economic, and political issues of the day. As king, George displayed remarkable empathy and humility for his subjects. In 1786, he was attacked by Margaret Nicholson, who tried to plunge a knife into his chest. When she was rough-handled away, George cried out, "The poor creature is mad. Do not hurt her. She did not hurt me," and ensured that she was taken to a hospital. He also bathed in the royal kitchens rather than the palace to save his servants the trouble of carrying hot water to a different building. Unquote. He was also known as Farmer George due to his interest in farming because he wanted to use the land to better feed his nation. He would actually till the soil himself and was often mistaken as a commoner. He was also the first European king to study natural sciences and funded 2 astronomers who eventually discovered the planet Uranus. When George was 50, he had his first bout of illness. Afterwards, George had several periods of mental and physical illness. As his illnesses progressed, he was moved as far away as possible from his wife and locked into his room. The stress was said to have turned the Queen's hair white. At the age of 72, he was already blind and weak with age. He was also worried about the sickness of his youngest child, Amelia, who died from tuberculosis at the age of 27. Soon after, he was strapped into what sounds like a straitjacket almost daily and signed the Regency Bill to hand power over to his son. His wife, Queen Charlotte, died in 1818. By the time King George III died of pneumonia in 1820, he had lived alone for almost a decade. This article reports that he would hold imaginary conversations with his dead children and spend hours crying. He would also spend time playing the organ and flute, as well as reading. I wanted to share this story because it is a reminder that life is complicated and we need to have compassion for everyone, even people who represent a reversed card. It is interesting that King George III started out as an example of an upright King of Cups. Sadly, he suffered many tragedies and also mental illness. He ended up being a comedic figure in Hamilton, which, now that I understand he was suffering from mental illness, makes me like his songs a whole lot less. Here are some questions to help you connect with the King of Cups. Number 1, do you feel like you are in touch with your emotions? What emotions are you comfortable showing in public? What emotions do you hide? Number 2, how do you deal with your emotions? Do you keep your emotions under control? Are you able to release them in a healthy manner? Number 3, are you a good listener? Number 4, are you calm during a crisis? Number 5, are you comfortable using intuition to make decisions? And finally, number 6, which matters more to you, relationships or how people see you? I hope this video has helped you connect with the King of Cups. If it has, I'd appreciate it if you'd like this video and also subscribe to my channel.